Madam President, I have just returned from Puerto Rico. I went there at the invitation of Governor Rocio. I spent time with his Secretary of Housing. I spent time with members of his executive staff. I went up into the mountains in the city named Las Piedras, a city of some 30,000 people, and according to the mayor who took me around and showed me a number of the residential neighborhoods, 30% of that city does not have electricity. It has been 8 months since the two hurricanes, first Maria and then Irma, hit the island of Puerto Rico, our fellow U.S. citizens. And there are still major parts of the island that do not have electricity. In this town of 30,000, you could go to different locations. One particular location further up the mountain, no electricity. So I asked the residents that I talked to, how are you coping? What do you do? They had a generator, but because of the shortage of fuel and the cost of the fuel, they can't run the generator all the time. So they use it for the necessities of cooking and other chores basically during the day. Therefore, they have no refrigeration. I asked, what do you do? And they showed me the fella had just come from the grocery store down the mountain, which they have to go and get their groceries that are perishable every day, cook them for that day, consume them, because they do not have refrigeration. And it's 8 months after the hurricane. Can you imagine that happening in any of our states on the mainland? Can you imagine the degree of anger and insistence that there be the full recovery? And yet this is happening to fellow U.S. citizens on the island of Puerto Rico. They are coping. They are a very, very industrious and inventive people. As they recover, they are looking at new ways instead of just allowing on what has been in the past a dilapidated electrical grid. Tesla has come in. I inspected this pilot project up on the top of a mountain, an array of solar cells, the most efficient that have been produced, and that array of solar panels is supplying electricity full-time to 12 houses up on the mountain. We need more of that. We need more of that as a backup to the electrical grid, and in some cases, a replacement for the electrical grid, since it has been so unreliable in the past. Therefore, Madam President, I wanted to bring this report to the Senate. Puerto Rico will make it. Although jobs are scarce, although many thousands have fled to the mainland to stay with relatives, although many of those that I met, thank goodness FEMA extended the temporary housing assistance to get those families through the end of the school year as their children would be uprooted in the middle of final exams and the graduations where appropriate, had that temporary assistance not been extended to the end of June. But many of them, they want to go back, but there's no job to go back to. There's a home that is now completely filled with mold and mildew. So what do they have to return to? I think we will see some number that will make their new life on the mainland. Many of those, of course, have come to my state of Florida. My report then to the Senate is we've got to do more. The Army Corps of Engineers has to keep pressing on with rebuilding the electrical grid. We must also go out and try to set up as many of the alternate electricity projects such as the Tesla, and hopefully we will see some returning to normalcy. You would have thought that by 8 months after a major hurricane, that would have already occurred. It has not, and I'm sad to report this to the Senate. Madam President, I yield the floor.